Coming to you live from the belly of the Sarlacc pit, it's the Movie Change Up Podcast Disney Plus Weekly Review, where each week I, Joe Fricke, and my host, Tristan Mayer, break down each week in Disney Plus. If you've watched our show before, you know exactly what we're about. If you haven't before, basically the idea behind this show is, hey, you probably got Disney Plus for whatever Marvel show's out or Star Wars show's out, but you're also like, hey, what else is out there that I can be watching? That's what we're here for to do. We review everything that comes out, as it premieres. Some things we keep up with because they keep our interest. Some things don't. And we kind of tell you if this is something you should watch, maybe who we would recommend this for. But yeah, if you've been watching our show, we kind of did a redesign of our kind of layout on the screen. And if you've only been listening to the audio format of the show, then you really don't care about my last two sentences. Anyways, Tristan, we've had a few releases this week. What are your general thoughts on Disney Plus for this week?
Yeah, we've had a few releases, thankfully, because I think the flagship release has been kind of a letdown, and I think this week culminated a lot of the disappointments I've been having with some of the episodes so far for the big flagship Boba Fett episode. But thankfully, I think everything else that dropped around it was very good and elevated the week a lot. So sure, this show maybe be a dud for me overall, but I think Disney Plus is still delivering for me, especially this week. We had some great stuff to talk about with Encanto, especially. I'm going to talk about that. Moon Knight trailer, I'm excited for more stuff. So, yeah, even though there's a dud in the front of it, I think we got a whole lot good to talk about. So,
Yeah, Book of Boba Fett's kind of been disappointing a little bit, but I think just the nature of the beast, if you were to go back to like when them saying like, hey, we're gonna do shows on Disney Plus, I think just the nature of like it's quality of a show is never a guarantee. There's always going to be a few duds. So I think the fact that it's a character I never really cared all that much about, like I was somewhat interested in it. But if you were to mark down like the shows we have upcoming and it was like, okay, one of them is going to be a little underwhelming, which one would you pick? Boba Fett's probably the one I would pick because it's the one I'm like, about the most. But yeah, let's just get right into it. Book of Boba Fett, essentially the plot of this episode is we kind of kick off with the flashback of or kind of the ending scene of what in the middle season 1 episodes where Boba Fett rescues Fennec Shand, and we see him take her to one of the mod parlors, which looked exactly kind of like the Star Wars version of a tattoo parlor, which I thought was pretty cool. And I like that aspect. I like kind of the first 2 minutes of this episode and about the last like 5 minutes. Everything else in between was kind of boring. But yeah, essentially after that, he picks her up and he's like, all right, I need to go get my ship. And we spend a big portion of the episode on him getting a ship. Once they get the ship, he's like, oh, I need an army and all that. Flash forward to present day. And he's like, basically, you can't do things without a tribe. Flash forward to present day. And it's just him talking with Black Chrysanthemum, recruiting him to his group. We see Black Chrysanthemum fight some Trandoshans, which seems weird and out of place if you're not deep into Star Wars lore and know that there's just like this massive rivalry, but that's like a long-standing rivalry between the Wookiees and the Trandoshans, because if you don't know that, it just seems super out of place and what is going on, other than this guy just has an attitude problem. And then, Boba Fett kind of tries to broker peace between the Trandoshans and these various groups on Tatooine and his new kind of crime family, but it doesn't exactly go great. He's got to use, his new pet as a threat. But yeah, ultimately for me, I kind of like the ending part. Like I said, I like the beginning part. But really, if you were to say, Joe, give me a list of 25 things you want to see in the Book of Boba Fett before it premiered, I wouldn't have even thought to be like, oh, him getting his ship back, because I just didn't care. Like, I thought about this because I did a rewatch tonight. I was kind of thinking it would have been faster and almost more badass if he had just walked up to where it was and he said, yeah, I'd like the ship in lot, whatever, 320C. And, the person looks it up. It's like, oh, that's been in our system for 5 years. It's probably, reduced to scraps at this point. And the guy looks up, realizes it's Boba Fett, and realizes like no one's even touched the ship because they know it's Boba Fett's ship, and he just hands the keys. And you have a scene that makes him look cool, look badass, and boom, you're done in 2 minutes. But I'll let you talk about this because I think you have a little bit stronger feelings than I do.
yeah, I was super disappointed by the episode. I thought it was kind of a culmination of nothing happening. And I mentioned last week that I kind of joked that I thought they showed nothing in the marketing because it turns out nothing happens in the show. And I feel like that was true here too. Feels like we spent the whole episode explaining things that didn't need to be explained, answering questions that no one was really asking. And it felt like a large waste of time. And you said, oh, a lot of it was about him getting his ship back. And I think that kind of was so frustrating for me to watch because I just don't, I'm tired of characters constantly going back and getting the thing that they already had before. And if we're going to have this whole arc, it would be cool to see Boba Fett go and be like, oh, I need a new ship. I need to make my own ship. I need something that I can like define as my own. So it's Boba Fett kind of building his own ship or something like that. And it's got to be like, oh, no, I got to go back. I got to get the exact ship, the exact armor that I had before because it's got to look like Boba Fett. And also, Joe, I have a question for you. Why did Boba Fett possibly think that his armor was in the Sarlacc pit? Because he had it on him when he got out of the
Yeah.
Sarlacc pit.
Originally, okay, so I was thinking this as well. Originally, I was like, well, he probably didn't remember, because he was like knocked out and not feeling great. And the Jawas peeled it off of him, and he probably maybe doesn't remember the order of the events. But then I remembered the only reason we saw that is we saw it through his memories. Because when he's in the back of the tank, so like that doesn't make sense to me. If he had to like take it off to like crawl out or something, it would have made sense. But I think to go back to your point, I don't really mind the whole like going back to get his armor, going back to get a ship. That's whatever. I don't care. But it's the fact that we know he gets his ship because we've seen it in The Mandalorian. So I'm like, if they wanted to dedicate a scene to him getting back his ship, sure, fine, whatever, don't care. But they basically this whole episode was essentially dedicated to seeing him do something we already know he did, and I don't think anyone really was like caring to see, oh, how did he get his ship back, because no one. It was never like a thing in Return of the Jedi of like Jabba, like, oh, you're never getting this ship back, and then he gets it in Mandalorian, and we're all like, how? It's just okay. You gotta. No one. This was not a question anyone cared to ask.
Yeah, this seems to, for me, kind of scare me for what the future might hold for some of these shows. Like if this is what they're giving us now, I do wonder like if this is this the highest they're aiming for, or is this like a low ball show for them? Because like the not just from the storytelling perspective, but I look at like the actual way it's shot and the way it looks and the coloring of it and the action is it's all so TV grade. It's very much not big budget at all, and especially compared to Mandalorian that was very much about like a movie scale budget, and occasionally it looked rough here and there once in a while, but I wouldn't say it looks bad. And this show to me does look bad. This for me is one of the worst shows that I've seen on Disney Plus. I mean, if I'm talking Disney Plus originals, this is by far the weakest one.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I would say the Marvel Star Wars, because I've seen some other ones that are like not Marvel Star Wars that I think are lower than this, but I think of the live action Marvel Star Wars show, this is probably definitely the bottom. But yeah, I think as far as the CG and the visual effects and stuff go in The Mandalorian, I always give it a little bit of a pass because I see them like trying to find the limitations and boundaries of the volume, but they're working with the same equipment in Book of Boba Fett and it looks worse, and so it should be like a progression of The Mandalorian. It should be like, okay, we've kind of honed in even more on what this technology can do, so it should look better. But one of the questions I posed to you that I've been thinking about is the problem with this show, I mean, besides the visual aspects and it looking too much like TV, not so much the content of the show, but the order and the pacing. Because I've been thinking, would the show be better if it wasn't told in a non-linear way, and they told it chronologically, where we had the first episode was 50 minutes. Because this is another problem I had, is apparently he spent 5 years with the Jawas, where before that line, if you had asked me how long was he with the Jawas, I would have said, I don't know, like 2 weeks maybe. But if we had done, the whole first episode opens with him escaping the Sarlacc pit, we see like various montages of him with not the Jawas, sorry, I keep saying Jawas, I meant the Tuskens. Of him with the Tuskens in various montages, and we see the whole thing and we feel like time elapses. It's like a 50-minute episode, and the episode essentially ends with, the Pikes have been harassing him, so he leaves to go talk to the Pikes. He comes back, and basically the episode ends with him like doing the funeral pyre for the Tuskens and like throwing the stuff on there. So we have kind of this big emotional ending. Episode 2 is essentially the episode we just got, minus all of the quote-unquote present-day gangster stuff.
Yeah, I think a
And then
lot of the
episode
problems that
3 would be basically all of the quote unquote present day gangster stuff that we've already seen just packed into one episode. And then so it would essentially be a 6 episode instead of a 7 episode, probably. And, and then, because, like, I honestly feel at this point, based on just like what the actors have said of like, oh, episodes 5, 6, and 7, that's like the best stuff, and like how this episode had ended with the Mandalorian tease, I kind of feel like now we're off to the races. I feel like, because I think so much of like going back to see stuff we didn't really need to see, where I think if they had put it in just linear order, it would have been better overall.
Yeah, if you're gonna do a non-linear narrative like this, the layers have to feed into each other, not
Yeah.
necessarily plot-wise, but like thematically or character-wise. And I never felt like it was, oh, Boba Fett's facing a problem in the current state. Now he's gonna flash back to some point he was with the
Yeah.
Jawas where he faced a similar problem, and it's gonna like
Yeah.
inform him on his current issue. That's how they should have worked this.
Yeah,
But
because that's how.
to me, it just felt like they had the through line of Boba Fett with these gangsters. They didn't really have much there, and it was just kind of like ideas. And then they had this Jawa through line. They didn't have much there. It was just kind of like ideas, and they were like, well, let's just kind of put them side by side and mush them together and kind of get a whole season out of this. And this feels very incomplete, and it feels like neither one of these storylines are interesting enough to be told and aren't told in any interesting way. Like you have Robert Rodriguez behind the camera, and it looks like the most boring thing possible.
Yeah.
Like this is a very expressive director, whether it's in Spy Kids or Machete, and some of his really
Shark Boy and Lava
his
Girl.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Like you can say they're not good, but they're all stylish and very expressive. And where is that here? Like the most they're getting is the biker gang. It that does somewhat seem out of place, even though I'm enjoying them. And I think, yeah, I don't know what the show is for and who it's for.
Yeah, and like there was a moment here in episode 4 where he's talking to Fennec, where Boba's talking to Fennec Shand, and he was basically like giving his whole reason for everything he's doing. Of basically like, oh, you can't do any. I've learned like you can't do everything alone. You need a tribe, and I'm like, we shouldn't be learning this in episode 4. We should be learning this in like episode 1 or 2.
And you call it the Book of Boba Fett. So to me, it's like, oh, you could have done chapter 1, 2, and 3 is like the Tuscan chapter. Then you have the chapter where he's in Tatooine, and then like you have the structure right there to do these chapters. And I don't know. It just feels like this show is the pacing is a big problem for sure. It feels like they're just kind of there's not really any thought into any of the episodes. It just feels like they kind of begin and end, and that's it. And there's not really like a through line of theme or anything like that. I don't know. I'm very confused of why we even had this show. Like you said, you get now and you think, oh, we're really off to the races now, and it's like you're only really thinking that because they're gonna bring in another character from another show that.
Well, it's more because like
another show.
The title of this episode is The Gathering Storm, and it's like, okay, we've already gathered the mod kids. We're getting we've got Black Chrysanthemum in the fold. You know, I feel like this is more like, okay, we've gathered. This is kind of like the Ocean's 11 gathering the crew to then go do the heist, go do the thing. But also, we should have. I don't know. It just felt like very out of order to me. Where I feel like if they had told this linearly, and you just have, and I almost feel like in a way having him into Mandalorian, because all of the stuff of like him getting his armor back and like a lot of his introduction, I don't want to say wasted because it perfectly worked in the Mandalorian, but it's like that's all this kind of stuff you'd want in his own show. So now it's like we've seen peak Boba. So what are we supposed to do now?
Yeah, the structure for this should have been Boba Fett is. From episode 1, he's kind of trying to take over the crime syndicate. Now he has these problems, and he has to kind of go episode to episode, kind of gathering together a team to take on the crime syndicate. That should have been if they wanted a structure, that could have been it. But right now there is no structure, and it feels very aimless. And we're already 2 episodes from the end, and I don't really even have a clear idea what who the villain is or like what. Yeah. I feel very much like we just spent half this season getting to what should have been like the premiere of the season.
Yeah, definitely. All right, any other final thoughts on Book of Boba Fett?
I'm glad it's wrapping up, Joe, and I'm curious. You know that the Din Djarin is, I'm sure, coming next week, and I wonder what state he's going to be in. We haven't seen him in a while. He was kind of left in the middle of this emotional moment, and we don't know what's up with him. We don't know what's up with Katie Sackhoff's character. I'm curious who we'll get and how much of the tissue is going to be laid here for the future of Mandalorian, and how much of it's just going to be like, oh, thanks for the help, Din. and he heads off. Is it going to be a cameo or is it going to be like a setup for the future of the character?
I'm honestly, just because of everything, I would not be surprised if he's not like a prominent part of the next 3 episodes. I think he's like basically going to be part of the crew for the next 3 episodes to help him take out the Pikes. It was kind of like a, hey, you helped me with Grogu, I'm gonna help you with the Pikes type deal.
And do you think it's just Jin, or do you think we see Bo-Katan or any of the other characters that are among that crew?
I'm trying to think who else is there. Okay, we're definitely not getting what's her face.
Oh, of course not. But yeah,
We could get I could see Din popping over to get Cobb Vanth,
Cobb
the,
Vanth, that would be awesome.
the marshal.
That would
Because
actually
maybe
that could,
all you need is him, Din going over and being like, hey, we need your help with the Pikes, and Din's like trying to explain, and Cobb Vanth's like, hey, the Pikes have been a problem for us over here too, so I'll gladly help you. Boom, there you go. Cobb Vanth is part of the team.
Yeah, this is kind of you mentioned that as kind of the gathering up of the characters, and I wonder how much of it's going to be the gathering up for the end of Boba Fett, and also for kind of what we get next, and what kind of the goal of this character. Like, we've heard that Crimson Dawn has been teased a little bit, and they haven't shown up at all. And I kind of wonder, are they going to be the Mephisto of this, where it all kind of seems like it all the carrots are there that it never really is anything else,
Yeah.
Or is it going to be kind of a thing that shows up at the end? Because my theory right now is that maybe Crimson Dawn is teased at the end of this show, then becomes kind of a primary antagonist of Mandalorian season 3, or sort of the future of that. So I could see them being like, oh, we solved this one problem, but now look at this. Good thing we have this team together now.
Yeah, it's like they like a post-credit scene is almost as maybe Din Djarin helps Boba Fett fight against the Pikes, and now that he's taken his helmet off willy-nilly, you see, and post-credit scene is Emilia Clarke sitting in her office, or whatever, sitting somewhere on a ship, and someone approaches and is like, hey, our Pike Syndicate's been wiped out, and we have evidence of the men responsible, and we just see Boba Fett and Din Djarin standing next to each other, and then boom, and then it just says The Mandalorian will premiere Christmas 2022.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get a tease for Mandalorian, because we have no idea what that show holds for us at the future now. So yeah, I think it'll be really curious to see. I'll complain about characters crossing over being like the only appeal at this point of the show, but it's like it'll be cool to see where they're at.
Yep, hearing more and more about someone else appearing in this show, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. A lot of things I heard about this show that we were talking about, oh, that's probably going to happen, and it's totally going to happen, and then it has not happened. So
yeah. Well, all right. You ready to move on to our next topic? Just say I don't think Boba Fett's going to be riding solo. I'll say that.
Yeah, let's go forward.
All right. So our next topic is we have the Moon Knight trailer that dropped earlier this week. I think that dropped Friday evening after we recorded our last week's episode of the review. So it didn't make our cut, or no, it premiered on.
It was on one of the sports.
Yeah, it appeared during one of the NFL games this last weekend. So I think maybe it was sad, or I don't know, one of them days. It was last weekend sometime, so it's a little late to talk about it, but this is what we do. Disney Plus Weekly Review. We're here to talk about Disney Plus. I'm gonna say I really like the trailer. We were talking how Book of Boba Fett hasn't appeared very cinematic and looks a lot like television. If you had said, I mean, I've known this is coming out, I know it's a TV show, if that trailer, same exact how it was cut, ended with coming to theaters Halloween 2022, I would have been like, okay. I wouldn't have been like, oh, that looks like TV, like that looks bad. The only thing that throws me off a little bit is the costume, and like the CG with the costume reminds me of the show that was on NBC around like the 2010 time called The Cape. But other than that, I'm probably the only person in the world that's watched The Cape because it lasted one season.
6-season movie, Joe.
Yeah. But other than that, Oscar Isaac, it's kind of weird that like one of the best actors working today is doing a Disney Plus show. But hey, capitalism, baby. That's, get that bread, Mr. Oscar Isaac. So I really like the trailer. It shows out. I don't really know a whole lot about Moon Knight except for what I've read on the upcoming of this show coming out with his like multiple personalities and like some weird chaos stuff. But Ethan Hawke looks really cool as this like cult leader looking figure. What are your thoughts? What do you think? Darn it. I had a great point I was about to The
Oh, he
guy that
segued
directed the
more. You
card,
missed the
the
segue.
guy that directed the Card Counter and First Reformed. He also wrote
It's
Taxi
Paul
Driver.
Schrader.
Paul Schrader. What do you think his thoughts are on the fact that the stars of his last two movies are starring in a Disney Plus TV series?
Like I would tell you, Joe, but I'm sure there'd be a lot of typos, a lot of casual offensiveness going on in that post. So I'm gonna err lightly on that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to Moon Knight a lot. I think I'm not familiar with the character, but I have read some of his highlights, and when I saw the show was coming out, I've been making a point to go through and read some of his stuff because I do think these Disney Plus shows are an excuse for me to kind of go back and use my Marvel Unlimited that I pay monthly for to go check out some of the classics of these characters. So I've been reading some of Moon Knight's older stuff. He runs around with the Ghost Rider kind of crowd of people, where it's like in the horror vein of Marvel. He first appeared in Werewolf by Night, who also got some rumors or maybe even an announcement for a Disney Plus special next year for Halloween. So I could see Moon Knight being a way to kind of set up their Halloween horror verse of the Marvel side. You know, they want to have like a dark Marvel universe versus like the more kind of fun, whimsical Marvel universe. And I think this could be a way to kind of wedge out their little side of that universe. Bring out Blade in there. You know, bring out the Black Knight from Eternals. Put him in there. I think that could be a fun little subculture of the Marvel cinematic universe to explore. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've seen. So I use TikTok like a 14-year-old girl, but I think all those apps are generally like what you make of it. If you watch like certain content, it kind of steers you to that content. So I see a lot of like Marvel superhero stuff, and a lot of people think like that's where kind of Disney Plus is headed. Is you're gonna have Blade, Black Knight, Moon Knight all team up as kind of like this Justice League Dark type of group.
Yeah, I think that would be a great move for them because they have the Young Avengers type thing building up, and they have their Secret Wars after that. So I could almost see like they have the Young Avengers, they have their like Dark Avengers, and then maybe the Secret Wars or kind of bigger events like that. They could kind of bring a couple other characters together, you know, and you could see Ghost Rider show up in Secret Wars, but not necessarily show up with like Ms. Marvel or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So I
Sam
could see
Elliott
that.
from the. I mean, Nicolas Cage is great, but can we get Sam Elliott from the Nicolas Cage movie as his version of Ghost Rider on a horse?
That'd be awesome, Joe. I would love. I'm really curious to see who they pick as some of these characters. You know, they have some really interesting and darker characters. Like Moon Knight can go to some really dark horror places, like very gothic horror places, and I wonder how dark they'll actually go with it and what they'll push. And obviously, it's not going to be like you're not going to be ripping arms off and bleeding everywhere. He's not going to be like a hard R or anything like that. But I
We
think
did
it'll be
we did see an arm get ripped off this week on Disney Plus. I'll just say that.
look.
Not blood
Yeah,
everywhere, but an arm was ripped off.
I was happy about that. I think I may have called that at some point that we were going to see a Wookiee actually rip somebody's arm off on the
I
show.
think
So
you did. I
I'll
think.
take points.
Yeah.
We got
Oh,
one
can I
prediction
can
right.
I go back really quick? I was gonna bring something up for the Book of Boba Fett. I know we've moved on.
Oh, no,
Do you know who plays Black Chrysanthemum?
I do not.
So that is Carrie Jones, who I'm sure you don't know, but
No.
he is in fact an Emmy winner. He has won an Emmy for makeup that he won because he's usually a makeup artist, but he's 6'7", and he won a Emmy makeup award for his work on The Walking Dead. So I just wanted to bring that
Oh,
up.
that's cool.
That we have an Emmy award winner working in Book of Boba Fett, just as an actor instead of a.
Yeah, we got some award winners on Moon Knight too. So I'm excited to see how that works out because Ethan Hawke, he's had interviews where he says he doesn't like superhero stuff, and now he's in this. So it'll be fun to see someone in a role who doesn't have this like childish, not childish, but like this childhood built up nostalgia for these characters, you know. So they're not going to be playing it from like a point of love or anything like that. They're like, oh, I'm gonna camp this up. I hope that Ethan Hawke goes all in because I feel like he's built for like a crazy villain performance, and I can't wait to check it out. Yeah, you got some high caliber stuff like Oscar Isaac, Ethan Hawke. Like those are at high genuine movie stars in this show. So he just needs reaching for the good stuff on this one.
Yeah, I'm fully on board of like Ethan Hawke's either gonna die or just be like in prison where they don't have to bring him up again, because I don't see him signing like a general, like a Marvel contract of like, I'll do 7 projects. I see him more being like, I will do this one show and then I will be done.
Yeah, I definitely think he's probably not making it out of the show alive.
Yeah.
uh, but who knows? Maybe he could do the thing where he shows up like uh, like the Batman before him. I can't remember the actor's name now. Michael Keaton. He just shows up once in a while and probably cashes paychecks for Sony to show up for like a couple of days,
Yeah.
to get some money.
Yep.
I also want to shout out to Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who were the directors of some of my favorite sci-fi movies, The Endless and Ritual, some really great indie sci-fi stuff that I've talked about a lot on our other shows. And they're involved as directors and writers on Moon Knight, so I think they're going to bring a lot of fun sci-fi weirdness to it. And if they're able to bring some of their work that I've seen them do and other stuff, I think this could be a really trippy, fun experience for me. And knowing my taste, I think I'm going to be really into the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems like it'll be fun. I'm hoping it goes like a little bit more darker than a lot of the stuff we've seen on the MCU side of Disney Plus, but it looks promising from everything we've seen so far. I'm definitely intrigued in watching. I mean, even if we weren't doing this show, I'd still 100% watch it. So
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely been shows we've talked about where I would not watch it, but this is one where I would absolutely be like moment to moment staying up to midnight to watch the episodes because I'm really really excited for this one.
yeah, especially because Oscar Isaac is a big figure and someone Twitter likes. This is definitely a show I'm going to be waking up at 3:15 for every Wednesday morning to watch, so I can go on Twitter the next day and not get spoiled.
Does he keep that British accent the whole time, Joe, or is that just
No, I
a
think
bait for
that's
the trailer?
one of his personalities. I think because he has the multiple I think one of his personalities has the British accent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that he's going to be in his traditional accent the whole time, most of the time, and that British accent in the teaser might be kind of like a fake out. People are like, "Oh, why is he talking with this crazy British accent?" And then when we get to the movie or to the series, that won't be that whole thing.
Yep. Yep. And you ready to move on to our next topic?
I'm ready. What do we got next, Joe?
Oh, I figure I'll run this one, take care of this. You don't have to talk that much. We are going to be talking about the Owl House. This is a project, thing on Disney Plus I'm very passionate about. It's about this character who lives in a house made of owls. If you don't know, that's a pretty cool thing because not everyone's house is made of owls. Some people have brick houses, some people have wood houses, some people have stone houses. But this house is an owl house. Tristan, what are your thoughts on my review of the Owl House?
Yeah, you were not very close, but you were in the vein a little bit. Yeah, the Owl House was a one for me that I watched. Joe, I don't think has seen a single second of it. But
Nope.
last week I mentioned that I want to kind of do some more deep cuts, some stuff that might be outside of our wheelhouse or our Owl House, if you will. And Joe mentioned how we don't quite cover stuff that is for like younger audiences and stuff that might not be for 20-something dudes who want to watch Star Wars shows and argue about Boba Fett. But this is one that I really liked a lot. It was called The Owl House. Like Joe said, it's now in its second season. The second season dropped last year in 2021. I have to imagine there's going to be another season because this, it's not because the second season that just premiered is actually its last season. So there's only 2 seasons out for this, but it's a really great show so far. It's a fantasy series where a young girl, she's a teenager, she's head off to kind of like a rehabilitation camp, and she accidentally stumbles through a portal. So instead of going to this camp, she's pulled into a horror fantasy world with all of these crazy creatures and these demons and actual magic and witches. And she's really excited. She's kind of like an outcast and a nerd, and she is happy to be in this fantasy world. And she's taken under the wing of the Wicked Witch of this kingdom and is kind of trained as her secret human apprentice. So there's a lot of cool themes in here where, of course, the character that you would normally see as a villain who's the Wicked Witch and her kind of like demon sidekick are actually the heroes of this. And they have personalities that are sure they're kind of dark and they do some twisted stuff, but they're trying to change and they're trying to improve. So you kind of have like these good guys who do bad things or these bad guys who have hearts of gold at the center of it. And then you have this happy-go-lucky main character at the center. You're trying to kind of smile in the face of all this horror and she sees stuff like these mutilated corpses of demons on the shore, and then she's like kind of enraptured by how cool it is to see this demon rather than the horror of this crazy creature. Uh, so you kind of have the wide eyes of that young adult, and I also liked it too because there's some really strong LGBT representation, and I think that's especially good in kids shows to do it very casually, not have it be like this big tragic thing. I think a lot of times in adult shows, when they try and do like a gay character, it's like about how they're bullied for being gay or how their parents don't like that they're gay or something like that, and it's like how tragic it is to be gay in the world, and this is just like, oh, they're gay and it's fine, and it's kind of just like part of the show, and part of the same way you treat any other romance in any other show, So I thought that was a really cool way to do this, and yeah, I'm excited to finish it up. I watched the whole first season, and now knowing that the second season is the final one, I'm curious to see how they wrap it up and what they do with all the characters, and yeah, I'm liking it a lot. And since it's the last season, I'm curious to see what the show's creator goes out and does next because I really like this one more than I thought that I would.
All right, yeah, yeah. Like I've seen images from it when I was looking at images to make our thumbnail for this episode. It looks like a 2D animated show, kind of a similar animation style of like a Gravity Falls or something. But yeah, am I gonna watch it? Probably not. But if what he said sounds interesting to you, by all means check it out. It's just I've got other stuff I want to watch that I'm too lazy to get around to. The number one show I've wanted to watch for like the last year and a half has been Ted Lasso. The only thing keeping me from doing that is I'm too lazy to install or figure out how to get Apple TV, either on my TV or on my computer. Either way, I've just haven't gotten around to it. I will at some point.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan of some kind of young adventure shows, and I think you might get something out of this. And there's arcs where it's like, oh, she meets a wizard who tells her she's the chosen one, and she has this arc of like, oh, I'm the chosen one. I don't have to do any work. I just get to have the powers, and it's kind of like a subversion of the tropes of the genre in that way, where it's like, oh, you could have your chosen one arc where the character just gets their powers, doesn't really necessarily have to earn it, but you have the arc of like, oh no, there's no chosen one, there's no magical prophecy that just
Harry
makes
Potter
everything
is the
come
chosen
true.
one.
Yeah, and there's no Anakin Skywalker to come in here and balance the Force, and I think there's a lot of fun stuff like that. So if you want this kind of like a fun uh, fantasy adventure that has some good adult humor too and some good character work, I think it's definitely a really fun watch. It's one that I think the family could really enjoy. It's not going to push the kids out of the room. It's not going to make the adults fall asleep. It's perfectly strikes the balance for I think everyone's going to get something out of it, especially if you're a fan of like the fantasy genre and you want to see kind of the tropes of that turned up a little bit.
All right. Ready for our next topic?
Let's do it, Joe. What's next?
Yeah, like I said, check out Owl House. I won't, but you can. Next topic is a movie that I am nominating for an award. And that movie is Encanto. And that award is Most Overrated Movie of the Year.
What?
I watched it. The message I got that I'm like, oh, this is gonna be like the sub message of the movie, but there's gonna be like a bigger message was the main message, and that's like, oh, you're special without your powers. I'm just like, oh, I don't care, and like I don't know, like it just never really came together for me. I thought like there was nothing that was ever like bad, but there was nothing to me that was ever like great or like above. Like if there was just a line going across this movie, like it never dips too low. Maybe never even dips at all, but it never raises super high either. It's just kind of like this steady line of being okay or fine. Like nothing was ever like, oh, this is a great moment. I would like go like on YouTube to look up that scene again. It was just okay, I guess. I don't know.
I will agree with you that I think the plot was slightly unambitious, and it does feel like it goes along this very traditional kind of kid animation lines where it's like, oh, the family doesn't understand the main character who's kind of like just different than everybody else, and then you find at the end they kind of realize like, oh, it's okay to be different and we can all still be a family together. And yeah, you can tell where it's going to end from like the first scene of it, but I still thought the ride was a lot of fun, and I especially thought the animation was really impressive. And we've talked about a few animated movies here, and I think this one was really gorgeous, and especially the facial expressions, like the people's faces are so the emotion you can convey in animation now is so impressive. Just the wide range of excitement and awe and sorrow and fear. And I was really just very impressed by the wide range of emotions they can convey on these characters' faces. And the cinematic quality of some of these shots. There's so many points where it's like they're mimicking lens effects, and it just looks so gorgeous. And I really like the world that it created, especially too. I think you, a lot of these Pixar movies paint like really big worlds. Like I think of Coco that painted like this huge underworld and all these vast kind of rules of the world and all these connected pieces of it. And this paints a very detailed picture of a really small world. Like just within this house and this one family, you get all this history and all of this kind of uh, depth to the world itself, and these little tiny nooks and crannies of a house all kind of mean something. And you talk about the house, the setting being a character is kind of a cliche that people say now in a lot of movies, where it's like, oh, the setting itself was part of the story, part of the movie. But I really felt like, yeah, the house was a character here, and the setting was a character here, and yeah, it goes along familiar beats. So it's not for me one that's going to be in the top of my ear or anything like that. But I definitely liked it a lot, and I think I'd recommend watching it, especially if you like the traditional kind of musicals, because this has a lot of great musical numbers. So if you got, we haven't even gone over the plot really. So
Yeah, the plot. I mean, you've seen it twice now, right?
yeah, I've now seen it twice. So the
I'll let
plot
you
here is
go.
that there's this young girl who is among a family of people who all have specific magical powers that kind of tie into their personality types, and they all have these very specific roles and these very specific powers that fit those roles. And she is the one person among the whole family who doesn't have a power, and people are kind of hitting their what is their puberty line and getting their power essentially, and she's not getting hers. So she feels like the outcast of the family. She's kind of waiting and waiting for her power to come along. And uh, I think, yeah, that storyline has been told before. I don't really want to go into the super details of like how it breaks down plot wise as it goes along, but yeah, I think Bruno. She kind of hears about this guy Bruno, who's like the outcast of the family, and they don't talk about Bruno as kind of the big song of the movie. And I think she kind of goes out on this hunt for the guy, the so-called Bruno, she thinks that he can tell her the truth of what her power is supposed to be and what her role is supposed to be, and she seeks out this I don't know, this wayward son of the family who that she thinks can give her guidance to what her role is supposed to be, because she thinks that if she doesn't have her role and have her power, that the family's going to kind of fall apart. And there's this threat to the magic that she thinks her family's all going to lose all their magic and all their powers because she can't find her role.
Yep. Yeah, like so much of this movie was weird to me. Of like, okay, she doesn't have her power, right? But also, she seems to be the only person that can communicate with the house, and that the house helps out. Like midway through, I started watching this movie. I'm like, is the house even like acknowledging the fact that there's other people in the house? And the answer I discovered was no. Like the house is like moving stuff, and like, cause the house is a sentient being that can control stuff and move stuff, and like helps her out all the time. It doesn't do that for anybody else in this whole movie. So I'm like, so I feel like this is her power. It's like that she's just connected to the house. And why is no one else acknowledging this? Why is the house not helping anyone else out? And like that bothered me. And then at the end, there was the whole thing of I didn't understand the ending at all. Of like, I don't want to spoil it, I guess, but it didn't really make sense to me. I don't know. The whole thing was weird. Like I felt like it just didn't. I'm not one that needs everything explained, but it felt like nothing was explained. So the movie just ended, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. The movie exists. I don't know why everyone's going gaga over it.
I was impressed by it. I wasn't blown away by it, but yeah, for me, there's definitely stuff that wasn't explained, but that was kind of the magical realism of the movie. Like you just
Yeah.
exist in this
Yeah.
world where
Like
this is
I didn't.
magic.
To me, I didn't need like how does this house exist explained, or like the whole candle, or like everyone getting their powers, which isn't a spoiler. That's all like the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like I didn't need that explained. It was more everything to do with Mirabelle at the end that I was confused by. I don't know, but like what you were talking to of like impressed by the visuals and animation. I'm like, to me, we're at the point where they can make fake lions look like real lions. You can talk as much crap as you want about the Jon Favreau Lion King. That movie sucked, but he's we're at the point where we're like can do anything with animation. So it's like, okay, the animation looked good, but anything less than animation looked good. I'm just like, well, your animation looks bad. I'm at the point where I don't care about good animation, because animation should always be good. Unless it looks bad, in that case you should have done better with your animation quality, if that makes sense.
Sure, but you still have to appreciate steps forward, and I definitely think this is a huge step forward for their animation. I've never seen characters this expressive in a Disney movie, and especially a Disney movie that where sometimes I think Disney has occasionally gotten lazy on some of their character animation. Some of their supporting characters are kind of copy and paste from other assets and not necessarily very expressive or unique. And I think all of these characters looked profoundly unique and really different from each other, and
That's
they all
for
had
sure.
really distinct personalities. And I thought that was a huge step up for Disney. It's something like Frozen. A lot of the characters kind of look similar, and I think you see stuff that goes viral where it's like, oh, they repeated this asset from this character and this character and this, and you're like, oh, okay, they're kind of not stepping it up, and this feels like a step up. This feels like people who were involved really wanted to make it as best as they possibly could make it. And another Lin-Manuel Miranda musical, so we've had a couple of those, three of them this year, I think that is. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was one of the better ones.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we got to say about Encanto?
No, it's been on Disney Plus since Christmas Eve of last year. So if you guys
Glad we
haven't
finally
seen it
got in.
yet,
Yep.
check it out. But I'm sure you already have, and I think it's a good family watch. I liked it a lot more than Joe did.
Yep. All right. We do have two more things to talk about that I forgot about until midway through recording. First one, we got an announcement that High School Musical, the musical season 3, started filming 3 days ago, along with some announcements that basically the main cast is back. Corbin Bleu will be guest appearing as himself. And I guess the new season is going to be set at a camp and not a high school. So it's High School, the musical series. However, not set in a high school and not about high school musicals. So the title's pretty basically irrelevant at this point, unless they're doing the plot for one of the High School Musical movies. Then I guess maybe it'll make sense. But so like I said, Corbin Bleu's back. For Hannah Montana fans, Jason Earls is going to be playing the camp director of Camp Shallow Lake, which I guess is a camp they'll be staying at, and apparently he's going to be like an anti-musical kind of guy. He's good, so that's going to be my favorite character.
Yeah, I know someone like that.
And yeah, I mean, there's going to be a few people, but no one whose name sticks out. But yeah, so I'm thinking if they start filming this now, this will probably be what, a late fall, Christmassy, maybe even next year kind of debut.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. With the way filming works now, it could be a little while, especially with the fairly large cast of young people. I think it's going to be hard to maintain all of that. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be curious to see how they execute it too. Like a lot of this show is like people in rooms having conversations, so I think they'll be able to pull it off while they're not having to do kind of really big, elaborate musical sequences. It's not one of those kind of musical shows, So I think this show could look pretty good. And yeah, the High School Musical too did have them go to a summer camp, and so maybe they could kind of retread that water and kind of tribute that a little bit. And I did read in the article they're going to do some songs, some camp rock, so we could get the crossover of the Disney universes come together. Yeah, Corbin Bleu also, that'll be fun. I wonder if he'll have a big role, or if it'll be kind of like Ryan was in the first season, where he just was in like a couple of scenes, one or two scenes of the cameo essentially, or if he's going to be like a reoccurring camp counselor type role, where he's going to be there a lot as himself or something like that. I don't know. It'll be really fun to see it.
This is my prediction. He's going to be there as a judge for the musical competition.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, especially because they could be like, oh, he was in High School Musical, and then they could kind of make a joke about how he wasn't even like one of the main characters or something. He's just like a guy who was in the movie.
Yeah. Well, they make a Catch That Kid reference.
Ooh, they better. My ears will be primed for that.
Yep. All right.
We got to get. And I also want to mention that I think the summer camp setting is a good change, because when you're in the same high school every season after season, that could potentially get tired. So I think changing them out to a different location could be a really fun way to get the characters in a new kind of settings and expose them to a lot of new characters. So it'll be fun to see how that all plays out.
Yep.
And they're doing Frozen, so we'll get some Frozen musical. We gotta get Olivia Rodrigo. What is she singing, you think?
Oh, she's got to sing "Let It Go." If she ain't singing "Let It Go," what are we here for?
Yeah, I'll be waiting all season for that one.
All right, and apparently, according to producers and showrunners, the behind-the-scenes drama between the two stars has not affected their on-set professionalism. So what are you gonna do?
It's good to know. Made them both very rich, so I think
Yeah.
they'll be okay.
Yeah, because it's all manufactured by their agents. So what are you gonna do? They probably broke up, and it's like they probably broke up, and it was amicable, and the agents were like, "But what if it wasn't, though?"
Look, you don't write those songs with amicable breakup. That's just some heart wrenching lyrics in there, Joe.
I guess Anyways, one final topic. It's not that big of a news. Apparently, Ahsoka Tano starts filming in Los Angeles either end of this month, beginning of next month. And Mandalorian season 3 finishes production on March 23rd.
They're clearing out the same parking lot that they filmed Book of Boba Fett in. They're saying,
Oh,
pull up the dump trucks of sand, just pour them out. We're good.
Yep. Maybe. All right. Any other final notes on Disney Plus this week?
No, it'll be a nice one next week. We got not any big movies dropping, but I know we have some stuff. I'll probably check out World According to Jeff Goldblum. We got some new episodes of that recently, so I'm looking forward to checking that out this week. And I'll try and find another deep cut somewhere that I can pull out for you guys.
I'm gonna find some stuff.
I'm
gonna find some stuff. If you can't find anything, I'll find like an old DCOM for you to watch. Wait, I can't remember. Were you like someone that watched a lot of DCOMs as a kid, or no?
I watched some of the highlights. I definitely, when I was in my peak of Disney, I was watching them all, but there's a lot of gaps in there.
All right, I'll maybe find an old DCOM for you to watch. Maybe find something relevant to what's. I guess there's only nothing like late January, early February that's like relevant to a DCOM. But
if you like National Treasure, which was a Disney movie, me and Johnny Dupe are doing a Nick Cage podcast. This we do it monthly. So the live episode is going to be up tonight, Friday night, on our YouTube channel, our Spotify, our whole shebang. So check that out. Me and Johnny go through it, talk about some of the highs, some of the lows of the elaborate, crazy career of Nicolas Cage. So if you want to go on that ride for us leading up to The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent in March, the podcast is called The Unbearable Podcast of Nick Cage's Massive Talent. So check it out. We're fanboying about the greatest actor of all time, Nick Cage.
All right. Yeah, definitely check that out. I haven't heard it yet. They didn't record it live, so I'll be very interested in seeing how that went. And I'll be looking forward to future episodes. And I believe, without further ado, goodbye. Hey, thank you for watching the Movie Change Up podcast. We'd really appreciate if you liked, commented, subscribed, and shared us with anyone you think might be into what we're doing over here. Thank you. Have a nice day.